The smell of caramelized onions hit Bryce Wellington the moment he stepped out of the taxi. And for the first time in 6 months, he felt genuine excitement coursing through his veins. The restaurant stood before him, a converted warehouse with exposed brick and floor-to-ceiling windows that caught the late afternoon sun. His restaurant. Well, almost. Opening night was in 3 weeks, and everything had to be perfect. He pushed through the door and found his head chef arguing with a supplier about truffle quality. Bryce had spent the last decade building his real estate empire, turning rundown properties into luxury developments across 3 states. At 32, he had more money than he knew what to do with, but this restaurant represented something different, something that actually mattered to him beyond spreadsheets and profit margins. His phone buzzed with a text from his business partner, Marcus. "Did you see the article? We have a problem." Bryce pulled up the local food blog on his phone and felt his jaw tighten. The headline read, "Wellington's Folly: Why Millionaires Should Stay Out of the Kitchen." The byline belonged to Willow Wright, the food critic whose reviews could make or break establishments in the city. He scanned the piece quickly, his blood pressure rising with each paragraph. Sources close to the project suggest Wellington has no culinary background whatsoever, the article stated. His decision to open a fine dining establishment reeks of ego rather than passion. The city's food scene doesn't need another vanity project from someone who thinks money can buy taste. Son of a... Bryce caught himself. She had not even tasted a single dish from his kitchen. She had not spoken to his chef, who had trained in Lyon and worked in 3 Michelin-starred restaurants. This was character assassination based on nothing but assumptions. Problem? His chef, Antoine, appeared beside him. "Nothing we cannot handle." Bryce pocketed his phone. "Let's make sure opening night is so good that critics eat their words along with our food." 3 days later, Bryce found himself sitting across from his sister at a cafe downtown. Melissa was the only family he had left after their parents died in a car accident when he was 25. She had helped him through the worst period of his life, and he trusted her judgment more than anyone else's. "You need to let it go," Melissa said, stirring her coffee. "Willow Wright is known for being tough. She wrote a scathing preview about Marcello's last year, and now they have a 6-month waiting list. She called my restaurant a vanity project." "Is it?" Melissa raised an eyebrow. "No." Bryce leaned back in his chair. "You know why I am doing this? Mom and Dad always talked about opening a place together. I am making that dream real." Melissa softened. "Then prove it. Stop obsessing over one critic's opinion." But Bryce could not let it go. Over the next week, he read every review Willow Wright had ever written. She was thoughtful, sharp, and clearly knew her stuff. She praised places that focused on quality ingredients and authentic techniques. She destroyed restaurants that relied on gimmicks or treated food as an afterthought. Despite his frustration, he found himself respecting her perspective, which made her dismissal of his restaurant sting even more. Opening night arrived with the weight of months of preparation. Bryce wore his best suit and stationed himself near the entrance, greeting guests as they arrived. The dining room looked perfect, candlelight reflecting off polished surfaces, soft jazz playing in the background. Antoine and his team worked with precision in the kitchen. Each played a small masterpiece. Halfway through service, she walked in. Bryce recognized Willow Wright immediately from her profile picture, though the photo had not captured how striking she was in person. She wore a simple black dress and had dark hair pulled back in a loose bun, a few strands framing her face. She moved with quiet confidence, her eyes already taking in every detail of the restaurant. She had not made a reservation. Of course she had not. Critics never announced themselves. His hostess looked uncertain, glancing at Bryce for guidance. The restaurant was fully booked, but he found himself nodding. They would make room. He watched as Willow was seated at a small table near the window, and then he did something impulsive. He headed to the kitchen. "I am taking over table 7, he told Antoine. His chef stared at him. "You cannot be serious. She wrote that I have no passion for food. Let me show her otherwise." "Bryce, you are not a chef. You will. I am not cooking, but I am selecting every course. Trust me." For the next 2 hours, Bryce orchestrated Willow Wright's meal with the intensity he usually reserved for million-dollar negotiations. He started her with the roasted beet salad, its colors vibrant against the white plate, goat cheese crumbles adding creamy contrast. He paired it with a crisp sansera. For the second course, he chose the house-made pasta with wild mushrooms, a recipe inspired by his mother's Sunday dinners. The main was seared duck breast with cherry gastrique, cooked precisely to medium rare. Each dish represented something personal, something real. He watched from a distance as she ate. Her expression remained neutral, professional. She made notes on her phone between bites. When the server brought out the final course, a deconstructed tiramisu that Antoine had perfected over months, Bryce realized his hands were shaking slightly. He shoved them in his pockets. Willow finished her meal, paid her bill, and left without ceremony. Bryce felt deflated despite the successful evening. Every other table had raved about their food. Multiple guests asked to speak to the chef. But the only opinion he found himself caring about was the one from the woman who had already decided his restaurant was not worth her time. The review posted 3 days later. "I went into Wellington's expecting to confirm my worst suspicions," Willow wrote. "Instead, I found something surprising: soul. This is not a vanity project. This is a love letter to food, executed with genuine respect for the craft." The pasta alone would be worth the visit, but every course demonstrated thought and care. The wine pairings were spot on. The service was attentive without being intrusive. Wellington has created something special here, and I am woman enough to admit when I am wrong about first impressions. She gave the restaurant 4 out of 5 stars. Bryce read the review 5 times, relief and vindication washing over him. The phone started ringing immediately with reservation requests. By the end of the day, they were booked solid for the next 2 months, but something nagged at him. He had won. She had admitted she was wrong. So why did he feel like their story was not finished? A week later, he found out why. Bryce was conducting interviews for an additional sous chef when Marcus burst into his office above the restaurant. "We have been invited to compete in the culinary challenge." Bryce looked up from the resume he was reading. "The what?" "The culinary challenge. It is a new charity event downtown. Local restaurants compete in cooking challenges, and all proceeds go to food banks. It is getting major press coverage." "Sounds great. Antoine should. They specifically requested you." The restaurant owner, apparently Willow Wright, is competing too. Critics versus restaurateurs. It is a whole thing. Bryce set down the resume. "You cannot be serious. Dead serious. And before you say no, think about the publicity. This could put us on the map nationally." "I am not a chef, Marcus. I will embarrass myself." "Then learn. You have 2 weeks. Besides, after that review, everyone is curious about the guy behind Wellington's. This is your chance to show them." Bryce spent the next 14 days in hell. Antoine became his drill sergeant, teaching him knife skills, cooking techniques, and timing. They worked after the restaurant closed, Bryce's hands cramping from practicing his julienne cuts, burns accumulating on his forearms from hot pans. "You have decent instincts," Antoine admitted one night after Bryce successfully prepared a complex reduction sauce. "But you lack finesse. Everything you do is too aggressive. Cooking requires gentleness sometimes. Gentleness is not really my strong suit. Then you will lose to the food critic who definitely has it. The morning of the culinary challenge, Bryce arrived at the convention center with his stomach in knots. The space was set up like a game show, with cooking stations, cameras, and a live audience. He spotted Willow immediately. She stood at her station, looking calm and collected, chatting with another competitor. When her eyes met his across the room, something electric passed between them. She offered a small nod of acknowledgement. He returned it. The host, a local television personality, explained the rules. 3 rounds, each with a mystery basket of ingredients. Judges would evaluate based on taste, presentation, and creativity. The winner would be crowned and receive a $10,000 donation to their charity of choice. Round 1 began with a blast of noise and movement. Bryce opened his basket to find shrimp, jalapenos, watermelon, and feta cheese. His mind raced. Sweet, spicy, salty. He could work with this. He decided on a grilled shrimp salad with watermelon, feta, and a jalapeno lime dressing. Simple but clean. As he worked, he caught glimpses of Willow at her station. She moved with efficient grace, her hands confident with the knife. She was making something more complex, what looked like shrimp ceviche with watermelon granita. Time ran out. The judges tasted every dish, making notes and conferring quietly. When they announced the results, Willow's ceviche took first place. Bryce came in third out of 6 competitors. Respectable, but not winning. Round 2 featured even more challenging ingredients: rabbit, dark chocolate, Brussels sprouts, and blood oranges. Bryce had never cooked rabbit in his life. He watched as Willow immediately broke down the small rabbit with expert precision. He followed her lead, trying to remember Antoine's lessons about respecting the protein. He created a pan-seared rabbit with roasted Brussels sprouts, a blood orange reduction, and a hint of dark chocolate in the sauce. It was ambitious, maybe too ambitious. When he plated it, the sauce looked thinner than he wanted. The judges tasted in silence. Bryce held his breath. "This is actually quite good," one judge said, pointing at his plate. "The chocolate is subtle, enhancing rather than overwhelming. Smart choice." He tied for first place with Willow in that round. The final round came down to just the 2 of them. The other competitors had been eliminated, and the energy in the room shifted. The audience leaned forward in their seats. Cameras focused on their stations. "For our final challenge," the host announced, "we are doing something different. Instead of a mystery basket, we are giving you access to a full pantry. Create a dessert that tells a story. You have 45 minutes. Dessert, Bryce's weakest area." He walked to the pantry and stared at the ingredients, his mind blank. What story could he tell? Then he thought about his mother, about Sunday dinners, about the raspberry tart she used to make every summer. He had not tasted it in 7 years, but he could still remember the way the sweetness balanced with the tartness, the buttery crust that crumbled perfectly. He gathered ingredients: flour, butter, raspberries, cream, sugar, lemon. He had watched his mother make this tart dozens of times. He had never made it himself. His hands moved almost on autopilot, muscle memory from a different life guiding him. He made the crust by hand, working the butter into the flour until it resembled coarse crumbs. While it chilled, he prepared the filling, cooking down raspberries with sugar and lemon zest. The smell transported him back to his childhood kitchen. He glanced at Willow. She was making what looked like a sophisticated plated dessert with multiple components. It would probably taste incredible. His single tart suddenly seemed simple, inadequate, but he kept going. He blind baked the crust, filled it with the raspberry mixture, and topped it with fresh berries and a light dusting of powdered sugar. When he plated a slice, He added a small quenelle of vanilla bean whipped cream. Time was called. Bryce stepped back from his station, exhausted. The judges tasted Willow's dessert first. It was a deconstructed apple pie with cinnamon ice cream, apple chip, and caramel sauce. They made appreciative noises, praised her technique. Then they tasted his tart. The head judge, a renowned pastry chef, took a bite and closed her eyes. When she opened them, they were bright. "This," she said, "tastes like home. The technique is not as advanced as your competitors, but the heart in this dessert is undeniable. I can taste the story. I can taste the love." The other judges nodded in agreement. When the host announced that Bryce had won the final round and the overall competition by a single point, he felt numb with shock. The audience applauded. Cameras flashed. Someone handed him an oversized check for $10,000. But all he saw was Willow walking toward him with her hand extended. "Congratulations," she said. Her handshake was firm. "That tart was beautiful. Your ceviche was better, maybe." She smiled for the first time, and he felt something shift in his chest. "But you won, fair and square." They stood there for a moment, hands still clasped, until someone pulled Bryce away for an interview. The next morning, Willow's blog post about the competition went viral. She wrote about the importance of heart in cooking, about how technique could only take you so far. She described Bryce's tart in detail, calling it a masterclass in the power of emotional cooking. She also wrote a single line that made Bryce's phone explode with messages. "Bryce Wellington is the real deal, and I cannot wait to see what he does next," he called her. He did not have her number, so he called the blog's general inquiry line and left a message. She called back within an hour. "This is Willow. It is Bryce Wellington from I Know Who You Are." He could hear the smile in her voice. "What can I do for you? Have dinner with me?" "Not at my restaurant, somewhere neutral." There was a pause. "Is this about the competition?" "No. This is about me wanting to have dinner with someone who understands why that raspberry tart mattered." Another pause, longer this time. "Okay, when?" They met 2 nights later at a small Italian place in the Arts District. It was the kind of restaurant where everyone knew everyone, and the owner's grandmother still made the pasta by hand in the back. Bryce arrived first and felt uncharacteristically nervous. He had negotiated million-dollar deals without breaking a sweat, but the thought of dinner with Willow Wright made his palms damp. She walked in wearing jeans and a soft blue sweater, her hair down around her shoulders. She looked younger, less formidable than she did in her professional capacity. "Sorry I am late," she said, sliding into the booth across from him. "I was finishing a review. Anyone I know? That new barbecue place on 5th. It is fantastic, actually. You should check it out." They ordered without looking at menus, both instinctively knowing what they wanted. The conversation flowed easily. She told him about growing up in a family of chefs, how she had loved food from the time she could walk. She had gone to culinary school but realized she was better at analyzing food than cooking it. "Plus, I like having a voice," she said. "I like being able to tell people about the amazing hole-in-the-wall places that deserve attention. I like holding pretentious restaurants accountable when they are all style and no substance. Like you thought mine was." She had the grace to look embarrassed. "I was wrong about that. I judged before I had all the information." "Why, honestly?" "Because I see so many rich people treat restaurants like toys. They open a place because it seems glamorous, and then they lose interest and close up shop, leaving their employees scrambling. I assumed you were the same. And now I know you make a mean raspberry tart." She leaned forward. "Tell me about it. Tell me the real story." So he did. He told her about his mother, about Sunday dinners, about how she and his father had always dreamed of opening a restaurant together. He told her about the accident, About inheriting money he would have traded in a heartbeat to have them back. He told her about the restaurant being his way of keeping them alive. Willow listened without interrupting, her eyes never leaving his face. When he finished, she reached across the table and took his hand. "I am sorry I did not see that from the beginning. How could you? I did not exactly advertise it. Still, I should have been more careful with my words." They talked until the restaurant closed, the owner finally coming over to gently tell them he needed to go home. Bryce walked Willow to her car, hands shoved in his pockets against the cool night air. "Thank you for dinner," she said. "Thank you for coming. We should do this again. Tomorrow." She laughed. "I have a tasting menu to review tomorrow, but the day after, it is a date." They saw each other 4 times that next week. Coffee on Wednesday morning before Willow headed to an interview. Lunch on Thursday at the barbecue place she had recommended. Drinks on Friday at a wine bar near his restaurant. And dinner on Saturday at a food truck park, where they sampled everything from Korean tacos to artisanal ice cream sandwiches. Bryce found himself thinking about her constantly. The way she closed her eyes when she tasted something exceptional. The way she argued passionately about the perfect ratio of chocolate to peanut butter. The way she laughed, open and genuine, when he told stories about his early days in real estate. On their 5th date, he took her to his restaurant after hours. They sat in the empty dining room and he cooked for her himself. Just pasta the way his mother used to make it, with butter and sage and fresh parmesan. "This is perfect," Willow said, twirling pasta around her fork. "Simple and perfect. You have changed my life," Bryce said suddenly. The words came out before he could stop them. "A month ago, I was just going through motions, building things, making money but not really living. And now I cannot wait to wake up because I might get to see you." Willow set down her fork. "Bryce, I know it is fast. I know we barely know each other, but I also know what I feel." She stood up and walked around the table. He stood to meet her and she kissed him. It was soft and sweet and tasted like sage and butter and promise. "I feel it too," she whispered against his lips. They spent the night talking and kissing and planning. She told him about her dream of writing a cookbook. He told her about wanting to open more restaurants, creating a legacy his parents would be proud of. They talked about traveling to Italy together, eating their way through Tuscany. They talked about everything and nothing, the hours slipping away unnoticed. Over the next 3 months, they became inseparable. Willow started spending nights at Bryce's penthouse apartment. He kept a drawer at her place for his things. They cooked together on quiet evenings, experimenting with recipes and laughing at their failures. They went to restaurant openings and food festivals, arguing good-naturedly about everything from proper pizza technique to the best local coffee. Bryce had never been happier. His restaurant continued to thrive, earning praise from critics beyond Willow. He opened a second location in a neighboring city. But none of those successes compared to the feeling of coming home to find Willow on his couch, reading a cookbook and making notes for her own writing. "Move in with me," he said one night in bed. "Officially, stop keeping your stuff in 2 places. That is a big step. I am ready for big steps. Are you?" She rolled over to face him, her expression serious. "My career depends on objectivity. If we live together, people will say I am biased. They will question every positive review I write about any restaurant you are involved with. Then do not review my restaurants anymore. There are plenty of other critics." It is not that simple. Why not? We cannot plan our lives around what other people might think. She was quiet for a long moment. "You are right. Let me think about it." He pulled her closer. "Take all the time you need." She moved in 2 weeks later. Bryce helped her pack up her apartment, carrying boxes and listening to her agonize over which kitchen gadgets to keep. Her collection of cookbooks filled an entire wall in his study. Her presence made his sterile penthouse feel like an actual home. They settled into a rhythm. Mornings, Willow worked on her cookbook while Bryce handled business calls. Afternoons, he went to the restaurant while she conducted tastings and interviews. Evenings, they came back together, sharing stories about their days over dinner. Weekends were sacred, reserved for exploring new restaurants or cooking elaborate meals for friends. Marcus teased Bryce mercilessly about being domesticated. "I never thought I would see the day when Bryce Wellington rushed home for dinner." "Neither did I," Bryce admitted, "but I would not change it for anything." 6 months after they started dating, Bryce received an offer to expand his restaurant group nationally. A major investment firm wanted to back him, providing capital to open locations in 5 cities over 3 years. It was everything he had worked toward, the kind of opportunity that came once in a lifetime. But it would mean constant travel, months away from home, missing the quiet evenings with Willow that had become the best part of his life. He talked it over with her on a Saturday morning, both of them still in pajamas, drinking coffee at the kitchen island. "You have to take it," Willow said immediately. "This is your dream. Part of my dream, you are the other part. Then we make it work. I can travel with you sometimes. I have wanted to explore food scenes in other cities anyway, and when I cannot come, we will video chat. People maintain relationships across distance all the time. I do not want distance. I want you next to me every night." She set down her coffee and took his hands. "Listen to me. I fell in love with you because you are passionate and driven, because you turn dreams into reality. Do not give that up for me. We will figure it out together." "You fell in love with me." It was the first time either of them had said the words. She blushed. "Is that really what you are focusing on right now?" "Yes, say it again." "I love you, you impossible man. I love you too, so much that I am going to turn down the offer." "Bryce, no, I am turning it down," he repeated firmly, "but I am going to counter with something better. I will expand, but slower. 2 cities instead of 5, and I want creative control over everything. That way I can build something sustainable, something I can manage without being gone all the time. I am not sacrificing what we have for business growth. I did that for too many years before I met you." Tears welled in Willow's eyes. "You would really do that?" "I would do anything for you. For us." She kissed him then, coffee and tears and love all mixing together. The investment firm agreed to his counter-proposal. Over the next year, Bryce opened 2 new restaurants, one in Boston and one in Chicago. Each opening, Willow was by his side, offering opinions on menu items and decor choices. She wrote glowing pieces about the dedication required to maintain quality across multiple locations. Her cookbook was published to critical acclaim, featuring recipes inspired by their travels and experiments together. They flew between cities, finding the best local markets and hidden gem restaurants. They cooked in hotel kitchens when they were homesick. They built a life that honored both of their passions, neither one demanding the other sacrifice what made them who they were. On their 1-year anniversary, Bryce planned something special. He told Willow they were going to dinner at a new restaurant he wanted to check out. She dressed up, and they took a car to an address across town. "This is your restaurant," she said when they pulled up to Wellington's. "The original one. I wanted to celebrate where it all started." Inside, the dining room was empty except for a single table set for 2. Candles flickered and soft music played. Antoine appeared from the kitchen, grinning. "Good evening, madam. We have prepared something special for you tonight." Course after course appeared, each one a memory. The roasted beet salad from Willow's first visit. The wild mushroom pasta that had started to change her mind. The seared duck that had sealed her positive review. The raspberry tart from the cooking competition. You recreated our entire history, Willow said, wiping her eyes. Not entirely. Bryce stood and pulled a small box from his pocket. I am hoping to add a new chapter. He got down on one knee and Willow's hand flew to her mouth. I competed against you and found my equal. I tried to impress you and found my inspiration. I fell in love with you and found my future. Willow Wright, will you marry me? Yes, she gasped. Yes, absolutely yes. The ring slid onto her finger perfectly. Bryce stood and pulled her into his arms, kissing her while Antoine cheered from the kitchen doorway. They were married 6 months later in a small ceremony at the restaurant. Close friends and family filled the dining room, and Antoine prepared a feast that had guests talking for months afterward. Melissa cried through the entire ceremony. Marcus gave a best man speech that was equal parts embarrassing stories and genuine affection. But the moment Bryce would remember forever was standing at the altar, watching Willow walk toward him in a simple white dress, her eyes locked on his. She held a bouquet of herbs from the restaurant's garden, rosemary and thyme and sage. When she reached him, she whispered, ready for the next adventure. With you, always. They honeymooned in Italy, eating their way through Rome and Florence and the Tuscan countryside. They took cooking classes and toured vineyards. They made love in ancient hotels and planned their future over bottles of wine and plates of pasta. When they returned home, they were even more in love than when they left. 2 years later, Willow published her second cookbook. This one focused on family meals and the stories behind them. Bryce wrote the foreword, talking about how food connected generations and created new traditions. They had started hosting Sunday dinners at their home, inviting friends and family to share meals the way Bryce's parents once had. It became their favorite tradition, the thing they both looked forward to all week. Bryce expanded to one more city, Denver, and then decided he was content. 3 restaurants, all thriving, all manageable. He had proven what he set out to prove. Now he wanted to focus on other things. I want a family, he told Willow one Sunday afternoon. They were cleaning up after dinner, guests departed, kitchen a comfortable mess. I want kids running around this place. I want to teach them how to make raspberry tarts. Willow set down the dish she was washing. I want that too. I want to show them that food is love. I want family dinners where everyone is laughing and talking over each other. So we are doing this. We are doing this. Their daughter was born on a crisp October morning, with dark hair like her mother and her father's stubborn chin. They named her Rose after Bryce's mother. Holding her for the first time, Bryce felt a completeness he had not known was possible. Willow looked up at him with exhausted, joyful eyes, and he fell in love with her all over again, deeper than before. Rose grew up in restaurants, sleeping in carriers while her parents worked, eventually graduating to sitting at tables and coloring while tasting this or that. By the time she was 3, she had opinions about proper seasoning. By 5, she could help make pasta from scratch. Their son, James, came 2 years after Rose. He was quieter, more contemplative, but he loved being in the kitchen even more than his sister. He would stand on a stool next to Bryce or Willow, carefully stirring sauces or arranging vegetables on plates. Sunday dinners grew louder and more chaotic, filled with children's laughter and spilled juice and the organized chaos of a full life. Bryce looked around the table at those dinners and felt his parents' presence, their dream not just realized but expanded beyond what they could have imagined. Willow continued writing, her books becoming increasingly popular. She shifted focus slightly, writing more about food and family, about passing down traditions and creating new ones. She wrote honestly about the challenges of balancing career and parenthood, about the guilt and joy that came with both. Her readers loved her authenticity. On their 10th wedding anniversary, they returned to Italy without the kids, leaving Rose and James with Melissa. They stayed in the same hotels, ate at the same restaurants, and marveled at how much had changed while the foundation remained solid. "You ever miss it?" Willow asked one evening over dinner in Florence. "The early days when it was just us, before everything got so complicated." Bryce considered the question. "Sometimes I miss the simplicity, but I would not trade what we have now. Our life is messy and loud and exhausting, and it is exactly what I want." "Even though you are married to a food critic who once called your restaurant a vanity project," he laughed. "Especially because of that. You pushed me to be better. You still do." "You made me believe in love," Willow said softly. "Real, deep, lasting love. Before you, I thought I was too independent, too focused on my career. You showed me I could have both. We showed each other." They toasted to that, glasses of wine catching the Italian sunset. Back home, they settled back into their rhythm. Bryce taught Rose how to make his mother's raspberry tart, standing beside her at the counter, guiding her hands as she worked butter into flour. James helped Willow develop recipes for her next book, his careful precision perfect for measuring ingredients. The restaurants continued to thrive. Bryce promoted from within, training the next generation of restaurant managers and chefs. He shifted from day-to-day operations to mentorship, finding he loved teaching others the way Antoine had taught him. Willow never reviewed Bryce's restaurants after they got together, maintaining her journalistic integrity. She did not need to. Everyone knew what she thought of Wellington's and the man behind it. She had written it in her very first positive review, and she stood by those words years later. "This is not a vanity project. This is a love letter to food." But more than that, it became a love story between two people who started as adversaries and became partners, who competed and found collaboration, who challenged each other and built something beautiful together. On Rose's 8th birthday, they threw a party at the original restaurant. Children ran between tables while adults caught up over appetizers. Antoine made a spectacular cake, layers of chocolate and raspberry that had the kids buzzing with sugar. Bryce stood with his arm around Willow, watching their children play, and felt grateful for every twist and turn that had brought them to this moment. "Thank you," he whispered to her. "For what?" "For writing that first article, for agreeing to compete against me, for giving us a chance." She leaned into him. "Thank you for proving me wrong, for cooking with your heart, for being the kind of man who keeps his promises." "What promise is that? You told me once that you would do anything for us. You have, every single day." He kissed the top of her head, breathing in the familiar scent of her shampoo mixed with vanilla from the kitchen. "Easiest promise I ever made." Years continued to pass, marked by milestones and quiet moments alike. Rose went off to culinary school, following in the footsteps of her grandmother she had never met. James chose a different path, studying architecture, but he still cooked Sunday dinners with his parents whenever he came home. The restaurants became institutions, beloved fixtures in their respective cities. Bryce and Willow grew older together, gray threading through their hair, laugh lines deepening around their eyes. They took walks every morning, holding hands and planning their day. They cooked together every chance they got, moving around each other in the kitchen with practiced ease. They traveled when they could, always seeking new flavors and experiences. On their 25th wedding anniversary, they returned to the convention center where they had competed in the culinary challenge. It looked exactly the same, though everything else had changed. They stood in the space where their lives had shifted, where competition had transformed into something deeper. "I would do it all again," Bryce said. "Every moment exactly the same. Even the part where I called you a rich guy with no passion, especially that part. It made me prove you wrong." Willow laughed, the sound as beautiful to him as it had been the first time he heard it. "You certainly did that." They left the convention center and went to dinner, not at Wellington's but at a tiny Vietnamese restaurant Willow had recently discovered. They shared pho and spring rolls and talked about their grandchildren, about the legacy they were building, about the years still ahead of them. That night, lying in bed in the home they had made together, Bryce thought about the journey from millionaire competitor to husband and father. He thought about his parents and how proud they would be. He thought about the scared, driven young man he had been, building an empire to fill a void, and the content man he had become, wealthy in ways that had nothing to do with money. "I love you," he said into the darkness. "I love you too," Willow replied, her hand finding his. "My unexpected rival, my perfect future." And that was the truth of it. What started as competition became collaboration. What began as rivalry became romance. They had built something together that was greater than either of them alone, a life rich with love and laughter and the best kind of chaos. The restaurant was just the beginning. The real masterpiece was the family they created, the love they nurtured, the life they chose every single day. Bryce Wellington had competed against food critic Willow Wright, never expecting his rival would become his future. But she had become that and so much more. She was his partner, his love, his home. And he would spend the rest of his life grateful that she had walked into his restaurant that opening night and given him a chance to prove her wrong, ultimately proving himself right in the process. Love, like cooking, was about heart, and theirs beat in perfect rhythm now and always.